December 1899. The British Army, widely considered the most formidable military machine on Earth, was losing a war in South Africa to a much smaller force of Boer fighters. Traditional rank-and-file formations proved practically useless against the highly mobile, hit-and-run tactics of the Boer commandos. Back in London, the rapid string of military humiliations sent shockwaves through the government. The Empire's global reputation as an invincible force was rapidly evaporating. Pouring thousands more infantrymen into the quagmire wouldn't fix a broken strategy. To prevent a total collapse of the campaign, the British needed an entirely new approach to command. In a moment of desperation, the War Office pulled an aging veteran out of retirement, Field Marshal Frederick Slay Roberts, appointing him as the new commander-in-chief in South Africa. Sending a 67-year-old man to solve a highly mobile, modern insurgency raised obvious questions about his capability to adapt.
But his selection relied on a specific resume. For decades, he had repeatedly walked into the Empire's worst overseas disasters and reliably forced a victory. He was an operative forged entirely by the brutal realities of asymmetrical colonial conflict. His trial by fire began back in 1857. As a young officer, he distinguished himself during the intense suppression of the Indian Mutiny. 2 decades later, during the Second Afghan War, he orchestrated the defining maneuver of his career. On September 1, 1880, his forces faced Ayub Khan's Afghan army. This map illustrates the strategic positioning around Kandahar. By rapidly repositioning his forces across hostile terrain, he outmaneuvered the Afghan army and secured a massive, decisive victory. That operation proved he could manage vast, complex logistics under intense pressure, eventually earning him the post of commander-in-chief in India from 1885 to 1893. By the time the call came from South Africa, he had spent nearly a half-century learning exactly how to break an unconventional enemy. Taking command in early 1900, Roberts immediately scrapped the defensive posture that was bleeding the army dry, replacing it with a relentless, forward-driving offensive. The results materialized in weeks. On March 13th, his forces occupied the capital of the Orange Free State Republic, Bloemfontein, and formally annexed the territory shortly after. He then systematically dismantled the enemy's infrastructure, capturing Johannesburg by the end of May and taking Pretoria on June 5th. By August 27th, he delivered a crushing tactical blow, defeating the remaining organized Boer commandos at Bergendale. In less than 12 months, a campaign on the brink of failure had been reversed into total systemic control for the British Empire. With the primary conventional phase of the war concluded, he handed command over to Horatio Herbert Kitchener in November 1900 and returned home. For rescuing the campaign, the government showered him with titles. Already a baron since 1892, he was newly created both an earl and a viscount. In 1901, he reached the pinnacle of the military hierarchy, accepting the appointment as commander-in-chief of the entire British Army. He held that post until 1904. Due to sweeping military reforms that followed his tenure, the office itself was abolished, making him the last person in history to hold the title. Even in retirement, his mind remained locked on strategy. Looking past the colonial skirmishes he had dominated, he began warning of a massive industrialized conflict brewing in Europe. He advocated heavily for compulsory military service, trying to convince a complacent political class that the next war would require entirely new levels of manpower. His warnings were largely ignored until they became reality. He lived just long enough to see the outbreak of World War I, dying in Saint-Omer, France, in November 1914. He spent his life mastering the warfare of the 19th century, yet his final years proved he was one of the few who actually understood the devastating scale of the century to come.